Welcome back, folks, to Investor Diaries. This is the home ownership series, video 3. In the previous video, which is video 2, we looked at things to do before you apply for a mortgage. Now, let's say that you are pretty close towards putting an offer for a condo or a house that you've liked. We'll walk you through all the steps that you need to take from this step towards getting possession of the house, which is closing the deal. So, Nitish, what should be the first step that we should be thinking about?
Yeah, that's great. So you've liked a house and you want to put an offer. Now, there are two kinds of offers typically that's out there. You can either put a firm offer or you can put a conditional offer. Now, what does this mean? What does a firm and conditional offer mean? Now, conditional offer typically means there are conditions attached to your offer or conditions attached to prior to closing the deal, right? These conditions can be about different aspects of the mortgage. Now, let's talk a little bit more about those conditions. Number one, purchase condition upon financing. What does this mean? So this is a pretty common condition for first-time home buyers making an offer on the house, and it requires a sign-off on the mortgage lender in order for the deal to go through. The buyer will have a few days to get this, and the process will include like a home appraisal. If the lender does not agree to finance the property, the buyer will notify the seller and the offer becomes null and void. So essentially, you want to make sure the financing is coming through before you agree to buying the property. So your offer is contingent or has a condition attached that financing would come through. There are a couple of other conditions as well. And Api, do you want to walk through the next condition?
Yeah, so that's home inspection. Now, this is really important because a home is probably something that you would buy probably once or just a few times in your entire life. So that's why you would want to make sure that the house that you are buying or the condo that you are purchasing has things in order. So the plumbing is in place, the kitchen appliances are in a good state, the flooring is good. So it's advisable to go for a home inspection. So you might want to get this done professionally. There are professional agents who do home inspection on your part. They check all the connections, see if the washer and the dryer is working, see if the burner is actually functioning well, and also checking for all connections in the house to make sure that when you enter the house, it's in a livable condition and you can make use of it.
Now, going to the next condition, you can purchase conditional based on a sale of a house. Now, this is when you want to sell a house and then buy a new house, right? So the condition is that your first property's sale goes through and you get some liquid cash to buy the new house. This is not ideal for a buyer. So if it's a really competitive market, putting a condition on sale of the house could potentially and may not lead to winning bids.
There is another scenario in which people put a firm offer. A firm offer essentially means that if the offer is accepted, then they can go ahead to the next step towards closing this particular deal. So Nitish, what could be some of the situations or scenarios in which people put firm offers?
Yeah, so a couple of scenarios could be when you're very sure of financing and you already might have a pre-approval, but you also have like an assurance from the lender that you're going to get the mortgage for sure, no matter what, right? So that's the typical scenario when you put a firm offer. The other scenario could be when you may not need a lot of financing or you may not need any financing at all. This is typically when you have a lot of liquid cash or you have disposed assets and you have some liquidity with you to buy a property, or the property price is pretty small, like you're buying a cottage or something like that, and you have some cash available, or you need a very little financing, like let's say less than 50%. Essentially, a firm offer is when you're sure that you're going to buy a property no matter what.
All right, so let's just assume that the offer that you placed is accepted. At that point of time, we need to ensure a couple of things. For instance, say reviewing the closing dates and ensuring that there is sufficient time from the day that the offer is accepted to a closing date. Now, the term sufficient time, Nitish, I believe is pretty subjective. So what would you define as a sufficient time?
Yeah, so it's a very good question, and it's a question that a lot of people might have in their mind. So we at Investor Diaries recommend that you typically have the closing date from the date of the offer to the closing date is typically about 1 to 2 months, because that gives you sufficient time to complete a home inspection, B, get your mortgage in order, and also gives you some time to shop around for the best rate for the mortgage, right? So you want to get that cushion or leeway. And between the offer accepted stage to the closing date, you typically have a couple of inspections scheduled in. This is part of the offer that you put in. Typically, it's about two scheduled inspections. At this time, you can visit the property properly along with the home inspector and then validate the appliances, any other issues. If there's something that's not working as per the expectation, then you can again go back to the negotiation table and try to work that into the contract. Maybe you want to do additional repairs. Maybe the appliance is not working and buy a new appliance. So you can put that in along with the offer and make sure you are not paying it out of your pocket for those.
Your offer has been accepted. Congratulations, you are about to become the owner of a new house. What next? So we'll speak about two major aspects here. First is the mortgage agent becomes really important, and the second is lawyer. So as far as say the mortgage is concerned, you need to be sure about a few things. First is which type of mortgage are you going to go for? Will you go for a fixed rate mortgage or a variable rate mortgage? Now it's pretty simple as to what these mortgages are. So fixed rate mortgage would mean that the interest rate will stay constant throughout the term of the mortgage. Now, throughout the term of the mortgage is different to throughout the term of the amortization. So for instance, you take a mortgage, the entire mortgage would be expected to be payable in say 20 or 25 years, but the term of the mortgage could be 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, or even 7 years. So for this duration of time, the mortgage rate is going to be fixed. There's another one which is the variable rate mortgage, and in that the interest rate typically fluctuates according to the Bank of Canada prime lending rate. So if the prime lending rate goes up, your interest rate would go up accordingly. If it goes down, it's going to go down. Typically, in my experience, I've seen that a lot of first-time buyers go for 5-year fixed, but that is not to say that it is the only one that you should go for. You should do your own analysis on what's your risk appetite and other details before you decide on this topic.
Yeah. And again, another key thing to keep in mind here, just to add to that, is the nature of the market too. So sometimes, like in current scenario, the variable rates do look very attractive, but it might not last for like 3 or 5 years. So you have to keep that in mind too. Maybe for the next 2 years, a variable rate mortgage might be very good, but maybe after 3 years, the interest rates are going to go up. So keep that factor in mind as well. Now, another aspect is open or closed mortgages. Now, what do you mean by open or closed? So an open mortgage is something that typically allows a home buyer to prepay without any penalty. So a fully open mortgages let borrowers pay additional amounts at any point in time, and you can typically close the entire mortgage in during the mortgage term. Now this is typically not very common, but again, if you are expecting to get a lot of liquidity infused into your portfolio, and you expect that over the term of the mortgage, let's say 3 or 5 years, you're going to close down the mortgage entirely, then probably you want to go for an open mortgage. Now, the other type of mortgage is a closed mortgage. Now, closed mortgage is typically where it's more common product out there. It's typically where the lender does not allow you to prepay the mortgage above a certain limit. So there might be a small clearance where you could prepay over the year. Possibly it'll be like about 10,000 or 20,000, depending on the size of the mortgage. But any amount above that limit, you would not be able to prepay without a penalty attached to it.
Okay. So now that we've spoken about the mortgages, we'll speak about the role of a lawyer here. And I think it's really important. The lawyer can help you in a multitude of ways, but we'll speak about 5. The first one is documentation review. So you can get in touch with the lawyer right at the time that you are about to place the offer. So the lawyer can actually look at the existing documentation and suggest you steps that you put in the offer that you're going to place. So your conditional offers can have a lot of inputs from the lawyer. Second, the down payment. Now we know that if you want to buy a house, you'll have to put together a down payment. It can be as low as 5%, it can go as high as the amount you want. But this down payment amount, you don't pay it to the actual owner of the house. You do a money order or a bank draft in the name of the trust of the lawyer. Third, you go to the lawyer's office to sign the agreement papers. And these agreement papers essentially mean that starting the closing date, you'll be taking possession of the house. Fourth, sending money from the bank to the lawyer's trust account. Now, let's say you are paying 10% as down payment, then in that case, 90% has to be paid to the lawyer's office, which means that someone from the bank, which typically this process is typically initiated by a mortgage agent. The mortgage agent instructs his or her bank to send in the money to the lawyer's trust account, and the lawyer's trust account then subsequently takes in this money, adds it to the down payment that you have put in, makes it equal to whatever is the selling price of the house, and then shifts towards the seller side. And finally, it is collecting the keys. So you don't collect the keys from the owner. You go to the lawyer's office to collect the keys. And this is how the closing process concludes. So it concludes at the lawyer's house, at the lawyer's office. And then at that same point of time, you are free to go to check out the house on that day or the next, as and when you deem suitable.
All right, so that concludes, that kind of wraps up this edition of the home ownership series. In our next video, we'll take you through a dummy scenario and walk you through the actual numbers to provide a better clarity or better understanding of this whole home ownership process. And it might be more insightful as we go more deeper into this home ownership series. So with that, thanks for tuning in and hope to catch you in our next video.
Thank you.